Welcome, everyone, to this IATM Insights session. It's fantastic to have all of you here today. And IATM, the International Association for Technology and Management, has put together this series to add additional value to those who are IATM members or friends. And so, what we're trying to do on a series of Saturdays is bring in the experts and provide you with, again, some additional value and some additional wisdom around topics of interest. So I'm excited today to welcome Dr. Shannon Gregg. Dr. Gregg is an aficionado of sales technology to increase efficiency in the sales process, and she's an early adopter and adoption influencer for sales technology systems, particularly Salesforce.com and technology that integrates with the Salesforce platform. She is known as a change agent, particularly in M&A environments, with successful track records of integrating process, product, service, pricing, and methodologies, notably with global teams and cultural sensitivity. She is the president of Cloud Adoption Solutions, a sales process and Salesforce consulting practice, and she also provides keynote talks, consulting, and workshops on sales productivity. She has two books out currently. It's About Time, and that's about focusing on effective time management, and it's being used by sales teams across the country to refocus on what's really important to drive revenue and results. And she has more recently introduced Sales Ops Design Shop, which focuses on sales ops as a revenue generator. And that's what she's going to be talking with you about today. I'm also thrilled to share that she is an adjunct faculty member at Point Park University. So I get to call her a colleague and a friend. So, Dr. Gregg, I will turn it over to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for having me here today and for joining us. Whether you're joining us live or you're joining us later on the YouTube channel, we're happy that you're here and excited that you want to spend a little bit of your time learning more about how to enhance sales enablement. It's my favorite topic. So let us dive right in. But I do want to tell you, let me see. Looks like my screen sharing got paused for a second. Let me return to that. I do want to let you know that one of my favorite things on the planet is talking about this topic. So if you'd like to join us in the chat, ask questions, we're also going to leave some time at the end to work through that. So really looking forward to having this time with you to discuss this topic today. So we are talking about how to enhance sales enablement and grow revenue without adding sales headcount. This is a really critical topic for teams all of the time, but especially now as we're seeing the influence of AI on the sales process. We're seeing sales teams who are being tasked to do more with less. And one thing that we know is quotas never rest. So whether you've worked with sales teams before or this is an introduction for how to effectively work with sales teams, I'm excited to talk about this with you today. All right. I want to make sure that you can see my screen because it keeps telling my screen sharing is paused. All
I actually saw your screen and it's coming up now. Yeah, there.
Perfect. Awesome. Great. Superb. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what is sales operations? So you understand that sales is a revenue generating activity. Most organizations have sales, whether you're a company of one and you're doing your sales yourself, or you're a large enterprise organization that's got a large and distinct sales focus. Sales operations is something that often means something different to every single company. And so I want to dive into this a little bit with you today, but I also want to deliver on the promise of how do I allow my salespeople, the people who are generating revenue, more time to do exactly that by digging inside of the organization and finding ways to make that more effective. So, Harvard Business Review launched in October of 1922, which is well over 100 years ago, a remarkable publication that is so focused on industry and commerce. And over 100 years ago, just a few months after it had been established, they published a quote that I found that I thought really said this was the beginning of sales operations. This was the first documented time I could find in my research that sales operations was mentioned. And what they talked about was that all organizations need to think about how they can become a well-managed business or how they had to be a business that just let business happen to them. And one of the things that Harvard Business Review said, well, 100 years ago, is that we really have to depend upon statistics. So we have to look at these indicators, which we call today KPIs, key performance indicators, or metrics, to determine, is our business healthy right now and will it be healthy in the future? The book that Dr. Doreen Saletti just talked about has a dive into what does sales look like in the future and how can sales operations support it. And with the increasing dependence on artificial intelligence, these things are going to become even more critical so that we can make rapid decisions that will eventually impact the way that organizations sell. So, just a few years later, sales professionals were being described as best being used when the sales force was prepared, when there was planning for the operations of the sales force was operating, and there was organization that allowed you to manage them. So, many of our universities now have professional selling courses. Some have professional selling majors. And the way that selling is being thought about now is totally different than it was when this was published in 1926. But the fact remains the same. What gets measured is something that is really critical to salespeople. So, being able to understand how we can promote additional revenue is really critical. And as we're looking at today, how do we increase sales without adding headcount? Knowing what it is that you're measuring is going to be really critical. And I'm going to talk about that with you in just a few moments. So, when you're thinking about how you can get the best bang for your buck from your sales team, a lot of times in the past, organizations would say, we have to add more feet on the street. We've got to have more people knocking on doors, making phone calls, and doing that belly to belly relationship sales. But the reality is, we have to look for ways to remove obstacles from their selling activities. I will tell you, I was on a site visit this week with a company that's here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where I sit most of the time. And this company still had an order system where a client would email an order, the salesperson fills out a piece of paper, runs it down to the warehouse, who starts to pick and pack it. The warehouse copies the invoice purchase order, takes it down to finance. And these are the types of things that we still see many organizations doing when we know they can be fueled by centering those non-revenue generating activities. And that is where you start when you want to evaluate how can we increase sales and grow revenue without adding additional headcount. So, looking to say, hey, how do we take the things out of your way, your administrative tasks, the duties that are getting in the way of you actually talking to prospects and customers, and pulling it back so you can focus your time on that, letting these humans do what they do best. I know most of you joining know about the different adult learning styles, but we've heard about, the auditory, the visual, and the kinesthetic learners. And everyone on this call or watching this video knows we're all a mix of those three things. But salespeople very generally are super kinesthetic. So they don't want to sit down and enter data in a system. So when we can find ways to reduce that, we're automatically going to increase their sales productivity time and their capacity to have productivity in front of them. So, sales operations, thinking about sales operations is the key to removing those obstacles and administrative tasks from our professional sales team. Now I know you're saying right now, oh my goodness gracious, this organization that I work in or organization that I work with, or this study that I'm doing, we can't just add more headcount. Right, exactly. Let's talk a little bit about how an organization can find the capacity to increase sales selling time, because that is the goal of any organization. Some of the challenges that we see that are focused in front of these people that we're trying to pull away from them by enhancing their sales effectiveness is their business model is complex and they don't know how to take it and put it into the people process technology triangle. They need to generate pipeline. Salespeople suffer from something that's called "What have you done for me lately?" And each month you've got a quota, and if you don't meet it, it doesn't matter how successful you were the past few quarters. Generally, research is showing us salespeople only have an 18-month lifespan at an organization. So we want to give them everything they need to be successful from day one. They don't have all of the processes they need, they don't have the automation they need. How can we fix these things so that our salespeople aren't spending their time holding their heads and instead are spending time delighting our prospects and customers? Here's where we talk about scaling without hiring. How can your organization be really thoughtful about driving revenue generating activities in an effective way? And I want to talk to you now about the concept of a center of excellence. Now, many people that think about a center of excellence think about a large organization like IBM, who has the funds and the capacity to deliver a big organization of people who sit around and think really hard about how to make the organization more productive, more effective, and more efficient. However, I'm here to tell you, even the smallest organizations can grow their revenue without adding headcount by being thoughtful about what I like to call shadow sales operations. So, 3 times in my professional career, I spun a sales operations organization up where there was none before by looking to see who in that organization could be seconded, who was already doing some of the work that I needed, and not worrying about direct influence. Who am I actually approving vacations for? No. Instead, we were looking to say who's doing a piece of what we need so that we can centralize it into a COE or Center of Excellence that would allow us to find the information that will guide revenue to a better place. So, the places I would encourage you to think about are FP&A. If you've got a person in your finance office or your accounting office who's looking at financial performance and analysis, there's a person who's already thinking about sales operations. Now, they may be a friend or foe to the sales organization because they're looking at lagging indicators, which we're going to talk about in just a few slides. So these folks will say, hey, sales team isn't producing enough pipeline. They haven't turned out enough orders, and our organization is not hitting its goals. That's sales evaluation. That's giving you information that you can use to tune in your revenue generating activities. Marketing. Very often, your marketing team is performing tasks that will add to your overall revenue generating pipeline manifesting systems. So, your marketing teams may be finding qualified leads and passing them over to the sales team. And they're probably already evaluating that to say what constitutes a qualified lead. What type of ROI are we getting from trade shows that we're attending? If we're spending money on Google AdWords or campaigns on LinkedIn, is this benefiting our sales organization? So there's a small shadow operation that you can pull into your center of excellence. Your operations team is probably looking to say, hey, when we get an order from sales, we know it takes 3 months before we can fulfill it, or it gets handed to us and we have to identify, do we have the project management to pull off the service delivery? They're considering that too. So the organization in your operations team may be able to give you intelligence that helps to drive your sales operations center of excellence. Your administrative team, you may have somebody who's helping with sales operations in a proposal capacity, a pricing capacity, contract capacity. So you can look for people who may be sitting in legal or finance who can give you more information that says, hey, look, we know that if we have a potential deal over $200,000 and it hasn't closed from 6 months from when it was identified, the chances of it closing are 10%. Awesome. That is some leading information that will help you turn things around and find more ways to generate revenue without adding headcount. And the one I really want to talk to you about, because I know everybody on this call today or watching this video is constantly thinking about how does AI fit in? How does AI fit into our technology management? How are we considering the way that we can use AI across the sales process to consider where we can tighten up the way that we are doing things? And I'm going to give you a resource in just a few minutes that's going to help you do exactly that. So, as you're thinking about sales enablement, without adding more people to your sales team, these are places you can look so that you can centralize this intelligence and think very thoughtfully about where it is that you can add information that's going to help out the folks in your sales organization drive more sales and opportunity identification. So, where does sales operations fit? Once you've been able to establish, yes, our organization needs sales operations, and I would argue, based on my research and practical experience, that even an organization of one needs to do evaluation of their pipeline and opportunity management. If you determine now's the time for me to have a sales operations or sales enablement team, you might be wondering where it fits. I can tell you, in my professional career as a sales operations department head, I have been under sales, I have been under marketing, I have been under finance, and I have been under operations. So I've learned that reporting to the CFO is distinctly different in terms of my personal evaluation than reporting to the chief revenue officer. But the tasks are still the same. So there's no single correct answer for where sales operations needs to be in any organization. They can sit in multiple departments because they have multiple stakeholders. So if you think about a sales professional who really is an entrepreneur in their own right, sitting inside of an organization, running their own book of business, they have multiple stakeholders that they have to report to. They have to give indications back to marketing about which activities made sense and brought them leads. They have to report out to operations to say, here's what's coming down the pipeline that you're going to have to fulfill. They have to give information to finance to say our business is in trouble or our business is working based on the message we're taking to market and how they're receiving it and whether they're giving us contracts or not. So, salespeople are used to reporting across multiple organizations because they are the engine that runs the company, right? Professional sellers often determine what's happening with an organization and how healthy it is. And so when you're thinking about sales operations, which can fuel that revenue generating fire that our sales professionals are developing, they might be appropriately placed in multiple different departments. And that's okay. So I would encourage you as you're considering how do I drive more revenue with adding more without adding more headcount, you might find it in different places. And what I see often is it could be the sponsoring executive. So if the CFO says we've got to tighten up on these sales people, we have to understand what their indicators mean. We need to know where the pipeline is coming from. That might be a beautiful place for the sales operations initiative to sit. It may start there, it may move somewhere else, knowing that you might have proposal people that are sitting in sales, pricing person sitting in finance, you might have people who are sitting in marketing, but understanding the direction that sales operations can give to salespeople and the rest of the organization will be critical in helping to drive this concept of a center of excellence. So, now that you understand a little bit how sales enablement can help to drive revenue generating activities without adding more heads, we have to talk about metrics. Of course, we have to talk about metrics. I know everybody who's joining us thinks about KPIs, SMART goals, considering how to tie your effort to your outcome. And I think it's critical that we talk about a predictability engine. With organizations who have boards, they want to see reports. Organizations who are IPO, they have stakeholders to answer to. So getting into this is going to be really critical for us. Dave Levinsky outlined 6 key common metrics for sales analysis. And I would argue with you, if you do any research inside of EBSCOhost or your library, you're going to find these are pretty common ones that organizations of any size are evaluating. What's the total sales by time period? We often talk in quarters. Salespeople think about a 90-day year. So what's your sales, right? Dr. Singh, how many sales have you made in the last 90 days? They're going to talk about that every Monday morning on your pipeline call. What's your sales by product or service? So, how many sales is product X pushing out? And then, what's our professional services in alignment with that? What's the sales by lead source? If we spent a lot of money going to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas and it cost us $282,000 to go there, did it result in sales that can be attributed back to that when we're looking inside of the way that we're spending our money as an organization? What's the revenue per sale? What's the cost of bringing that sale into us? If we brought in a giant sale, but there's no revenue or profit margin, and is it worth it? Dr. Sleddy, I think we might have a question in the chat.
Well, there is a comment that your screen share has stopped.
Ah,
So, if there are questions from the audience, please do either unmute or type them into the chat, and we'll make sure that they get to Dr. Greg.
perfect. Can you verify, Dr. Sleddy, you see my screen again?
I do see your screen.
Superb. Thank you. So, we often want to look at new versus returning customer sales. Some organizations will value new logos higher than they will value existing customers because they're already in and you're already pleasing them. And then sales per prior activity. But I want to tell you, when you're thinking about these common sales measurements, there are other ones that we can look at too. When we think about leading versus lagging indicators, a lagging indicator is sitting here in the past. That's what you've already done. Those things cannot be changed. Dr. Singh made $1 million in sales in the fourth quarter of 2025. That's done and dusted. There's nothing we can do to change that outcome. However, when you think about leading indicators, now we can say, hey, Dr. Singh, we're looking at your pipeline for the first quarter of 2026, and we know that your conversion rate is 30% and you don't have enough in there to meet your quota. So the concept of thinking past what already happened and thinking into what's happening next is going to be absolutely critical for driving revenue without adding additional headcount. This type of intelligence in your sales opportunities is going to help you manage proactively so that you're not looking back at a stinky quarter and saying, I wish we would have recognized this earlier. So, what are some of these leading indicators that we can look at? Well, we've got the Sales Enablement Collective who's showing you a pretty simple graph that says the shorter that we can ramp a salesperson, the more revenue they can generate, which just makes sense. If I can get somebody in and trained in the first 2 months of their likely 18-month tenure, they're going to turn around more sales for my organization more quickly. Perfect. I wanted to give you a quick list of some ways that you can develop indicators that will help you to see how can we adjust and course correct so that we can have more revenue generated out of our professional salespeople before we're looking back at the reports that show us why we didn't make it. So there are activity-based ones, which is the number of calls or emails, social touches, the number of meetings that they scheduled or presentations that they gave, the time that they spent on their core sales activities. This can often be extracted from either your CRM, your client relationship management, which could be Salesforce or HubSpot. You could find it in a sales enablement tool like an Apollo or a Gong. There is an extreme, inordinate amount of sales technology out there. And what I always say to my customers is, don't buy technology unless you know what you want it to tell you when your sales team is using it. So determine that outcome, begin with the end in mind, and make sure that you know what are you going to do with those indicators once you have them. Pipeline, you can see the number of new leads that are generated, the number of qualified opportunities that are generated, how quality are they, and then what's the conversion rate between sales stages. I absolutely love this one. If you've got a sales team where you can at least A/B test and say, okay, We know that Dr. Doreen has had a really tough time converting things between proposal sent and negotiation. Maybe she needs a little bit of training in negotiation. So it allows you to get in and identify and triage the root cause of the salespeople not converting faster. And that is intelligence you can use to help Doreen be more successful in her revenue generating activities without adding more feet on the street. Thinking about the value of the pipeline that's created. How well is that pipeline converting? What are the things that are the same between your opportunities that make you say, we know we do very, very well with medium-sized businesses. We shouldn't bother selling to an enterprise-sized organization. Process based. What's your time to first response? We all know time kills deals, and guess what? Time kills leads even faster. If somebody sends you a message and says, I'm interested, and you don't respond within the first 24 hours, that lead is just about dead. So, thinking about that as a leading indicator will allow you to focus back so that you can tighten up the way that you're generating revenue. What's the frequency of customer interaction? Doreen and I have looked at this a lot for our professional selling students to say, generally, it takes about 7 touches to get a prospect to turn around. So if we know we need to send them a message on LinkedIn, email them, call them, visit with them, have a Zoom with them, we have to stay focused on that. And that's the type of leading indicator that will allow you, as a manager or a consultant or an evaluator or an academic advisor, to say, if you've only reached out 3 times, they probably aren't receiving your message. So, thinking about the difference between a lagging indicator, which I'll just go back because I love this picture because it so clearly says measuring what already happened is important, but getting in front of and measuring what hasn't happened yet, where you can influence and course correct, will definitely allow you for more productivity and additional revenue generated by your existing sales team. So I really encourage everybody to think about that. Where can you look for those whispers that tell you, "Hey, we better figure this out," and shift it before we're looking back and there's nothing we can do once it's in the rearview mirror. Now we're going to talk about what I think is probably everybody's most exciting, most challenging, most frightening, and most overwhelming topic, which is the age of artificial intelligence and how you can use AI as a force multiplier. Because everybody's talking about it. And I want to tell you, I was being very serious when I said I just visited a customer live in person who showed me their very paper-based system. And so they've got to adopt this crawl, walk, run approach that says, first, let's look at our paper-based system and understand, is that the most effective process? And then let's think about how we can get it onto technology. Because if you try to jump from paper to AI in an organization like this, their manufacturing company, that might be so much for them to take. And I think we all know the principles of change management start with quick wins. So, as you're thinking about AI, and I'm encouraging you today to really dream of what's possible, give yourself some space and silence and stillness to consider how AI can influence your sales process. Think about it that way too. Some organizations can't be overwhelmed, but when you want to consider how to bring AI in without adding headcount, some of the ways that you can start are lead management. AI does a very nice job of lead scoring and qualification based on previous indication. So if you know that your organization does very well with businesses between 50 and $350 million who are in the manufacturing space, who are selling into Department of Defense, then you can say, we know from lead scoring that can be qualified. Let's surface that more quickly. AI does great with that. If you can draw an if-then correlation in your lagging indicators, AI can help you with that. It does a great job with prospecting as well, but I do caution everybody to be careful about the way that AI is being used in prospecting. I myself, I hope that you add me on LinkedIn, and you will see when you add me on LinkedIn, my name says Shannon space J dot. So I know right away when I get a message in my LinkedIn inbox that says, "Hi, Shannon J dot," that's coming from a bot, and I generally filter it right back out. So Prospecting is one of the ones that I urge a little bit of caution, but AI can help a lot there. Customer communication and engagement. You can do personalized outreach, responses that say, "Thank you for reaching out to us. We'll get back to you within just a few hours." Chatbots have been around for a little bit of time. Conversational AI is one that's new. I wanted to show you this little video, and I hope this doesn't disrupt my screen share, but if it does, I'll come right back. There is this really cool sales bot, an SDR, that 11x has launched. And I would encourage you just to go play with this. They've got Alice and they've also got Julian, and they look like real people. The response time is pretty great. And I will tell you, especially if you've got any students or customers who are in the younger generations, they don't have a problem talking to chatbots. They really don't. So they want to surface information before they have to talk to a person to make sure that they have all the information they need so they can make a quick snap decision. Smart meeting scheduling is one that I personally love. A tool that I really enjoy is called Reclaim.ai, and I've used Reclaim AI to help my own sales activities, and I've given it rules like find 30 minutes for me to eat during the day because I don't know about the rest of you, but if I don't eat, I get pretty hangry. So there are loads of AI tools that you can use to automate that so that your salespeople automatically have built-in rules that make them more productive during the day. And then really sales process optimization is probably the one that's the stickiest, it's the horniest, it's the hardest to talk about because there's so many tentacles out there and that people process technology triangle that introduce a little bit of influence from the people who have always done it a particular way, and we all know them. But your sales process optimization, some that I really love, conversation analysis will say, hey, what I saw was Shannon was talking 75% of the time, and the prospect could only talk 25%. And we all know in sales, the reason we have two ears is to listen twice as much as our prospect is talking. And if we're talking over them, that's never going to work. Coaching tools, really great. There are some AI coaching tools that can help to augment the sales manager or the business owner so that you can get down inside of how a salesperson can improve. CRM data entry and hygiene. You can put in small automation with your AI that says, this is a duplicate account. We already see Penwest Clarion has been in here 3 times. We want to make sure you aren't creating duplicate information based on unique identifiers. We can look at sales forecasting and pipeline analytics that can immediately tell a salesperson, we know your quota is 500,000 this month, and we know that your sales close rate is 30%. So you've got to increase your pipeline by 2x. Here are ways to do that. Content creation enablement. That's one I think most people are doing the best with, using generative AI to help inspire content. Hopefully not full force creating the content for them, but allowing you to say, is this speaking to what I wanted to speak to for this particular prospect or client? I am absolutely obsessed with there's an AI for that. This is a wonderful tool that our friend RJ introduced us to probably the day that this website came out. But I wanted to show you just on there's an AI for that, how many AI tools they have for sales. Are they all great? No. Are they all sustainable? Not necessarily. But I want you, oh, thank you so much. Let me pull you back in. There's an AI for that is a wonderful website that is going to help you find AI tools that can dig right into a specific area that you need to automate. So if you're looking at prospecting, great place to start, increasing revenue capacity for your salespeople without adding headcount. Customer analysis, making sure that you're looking at your ICP, your ideal client persona, and making sure that the opportunities that you're looking out for are falling within that zone of genius. Looking at your sales calls, looking at price optimization, evaluating your proposals, ensuring that you aren't offering wildly different prices to the market. There are wonderful tools out there that can help you when you're looking at AI for increasing your sales revenue generating without adding headcount. So, this is one that I really encourage you to get inside of and play around with. When we're thinking about sales operations and the way that you can dig inside of adding additional headcount without adding revenue, there are so many ways to do it. I have created for you, and I'll share with you on the next screen after we take a few questions, a workbook that you can go through and say, let's evaluate where we are now so that we can generate more revenue within our sales team. I want to open this up for questions now, so I'm going to stop.